Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and this is the 14th entry in my participation in, or my answers for the RPG a Day event for 2017. If you are joining us for the first time, this is a series of videos I'm posting to answer 31 questions that are posed throughout the month of August 2017 to dealing with role-playing games or your experience with RPGs or your thoughts on RPGs or whatnot. Today's question is, one moment here. Today's question is, which RPG do you prefer for open-ended campaign play? So I don't have a specific question or a specific game in mind for that. Like, I mean, and I'm going to squirrel this question just a little bit here. So the question of what do you prefer for open campaign play strikes me more as like if you could take it one way to say just, well, what's your favorite game to run long term? And I don't think that's really what the intent of the game or the question is. I think the question is more what game, like what literal game is best suited for long-term campaign play. So one of the things that I wanted to, because it's been foremost in my mind the last little while, because I have run a fair amount of level-based games in the last little bit. That's what I wanted to talk about. I think that for open-ended campaign play where you don't actually have an end point, where there isn't and now we're done, campaign where it's just going to play until everyone's schedule falls apart or whatever. The kind of game I think that is best suited for that is something that doesn't have a level system. Or as a qualifier, has a very clear, well, I guess then it would have an end. I was going to say a very clear guideposts or milestones for when the game was going to finish. I had a friend in town recently who was he's an author, but he's also a big gaming buddy. So we were talking about the level systems because we both have run 5th edition D&D and other versions of D&D in the past as well. And one of the things that we thought of, in particular, both of us have extensive experience with 3rd edition, 3.5, and Pathfinder. And we have a friend who is a player in both of our campaigns who routinely, regardless of whether we're starting at level 1 or whether we're starting at level 3 or starting at level 9, he will plot his character out till 20th level, regardless. And that's just a style of play. And I mean, like, I don't disagree with anyone's enjoyment of play. But one of the things that I found over the last little while, and it could just be me as the DM thinking this way, well, the first time I ran 5th edition D&D, right after it came out, I ran the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. And from the outset, my pitch to the players was, look, we'll play this along and we'll do, try and get done like a level every 2 sessions. So we'll do a level every 2 sessions. We'll really see our characters through and we'll get a chance to play through this new campaign and get a chance to see what characters develop like under the new system. That fell apart because I just don't run games that way. Like I really like letting players, smell the roses, as it were, in the campaign settings. So we quickly got distracted by a bunch of different things, and we ended up also having a spread of level builds. I decided to try using or enforcing the leveling mechanic that it was. I'm sorry, the XP per kill kind of, or per quest or per whatever. For tasks completed, that 5th edition has as its default XP system. And that ended up having a bit of a range. People who weren't at the session didn't get XP. And I figured that because of the bounded accuracy, it wasn't really going to make a big difference. People whose characters, quote unquote, fell behind weren't going to be mechanically that much inferior to other players. I think I was wrong about that. But in any event, we had a spread of about, by the time we were finished, we had a spread of between level, I think 4 or 5 to up to level 8. That was our spread of characters. But the thing that I kept thinking of when I was running it, though, is the level system. It was really foremost in my mind that I wanted to make sure players were getting something mechanically out of every session. And that was a carryover from the previous game we had run, which was Iron Kingdoms. I spoke about Iron Kingdoms in the series of the Iron Kingdoms role-playing game in the series of videos before. But one of the really neat things about that game is that you do get used to getting a tangible reward for your character every session or every 2 sessions, depending how far your characters are along. At higher levels, sometimes even every 3 sessions, you depending on what happened in the campaign or in the adventure, I should say. But in any event, prior to the release of 5th edition, I was exploring other options for running like fantasy D&D style fantasy games, and I had bought pretty heavily into Pathfinder and also 13th Age, and both of those games. One of them in the rules is written and the other in sets of optional rules, but they give you optional rules. Both those games had ways to sort of break out the components you get at each level and provide steps towards the next level. So for instance, rather than having to wait until you reached a new level to get everything that came with that level, you would get small steps towards that. And then there was some big payoff that you wouldn't get until, like your class features, you wouldn't get until you hit the next level, but you could get your hit points, or you could get a new skill point, or you could get, I can't remember what else, but maybe a new power if it was 13th Age. But in any event, 5th edition, we started running that, and it didn't lend itself to that. Like 5th edition D&D does not have easily, separable parts to it. The levels really, you get your class features, and that's kind of it. Sometimes you will get a proficiency increase, but that's again level driven. You don't get skill points, so it was really hard to think of what other things players could get as a reward other than the next level. And in a game like that, because I had structured the campaign, mainly because I structured the campaign that way, saying we were going to get new levels each time, players were constantly chasing that, or I felt that they were constantly waiting for that next level. And I felt that when I was postponing it because we weren't quite through the story or whatever else, that there was a problem there, or they weren't getting the reward that they were expecting with the campaign. Now that is just me, and it's also structurally how I set the campaign up. But I think an open-ended game for a level-based game, unless you're just doing strictly you're getting XP from doing things, and then when you hit the next level, when you get enough XP to hit the next level, that's when you're at that level. Then maybe level-based games would work well, and it would also incentivize players to go out and do stuff to try and gain XP if they want to gain levels. But if you're doing a milestone approach, which a lot of Pathfinder adventure paths do, which is kind of the default way I always used to run D&D before they formalize it as this kind of milestones kind of progression. And if you're not familiar with that, it's just there are certain waypoints in the story where once you finish that part of the story, you gain a new level. That's the basic idea, rather than having to wait till you killed X amount of kobolds, or collected Y amount of XP through non-combat quests or whatever, or story quests. You just gain levels when the DM tells you you're going to gain levels. So I don't think that the milestone approach really works in an open-ended campaign, because unless the players are really comfortable with the DM just arbitrarily telling you when you're going to get the next level, then then it's a difficult. Then you're going to, I guess, have to have an idea of what the milestones are for that ongoing campaign. The other thing is, and again, this is just a function of me thinking about this, but I can't help but think that players at some level, or certain players, especially if they're theory crafting players, they're going to feel their characters are incomplete at certain points of that campaign as well, because they've got their build in mind for where they're going to get to. And I guess that's true of any kind of, like, even an XP system where you're just getting experience points and there's no framework for levels to spend those XP in. You're still going to be, there's still going to be an element of theory crafting, but I feel like the level mechanic more strongly reinforces that amongst everybody. And I think also in a lot of level-based games, there's certain content that is key to certain levels as well too, that you're just not going to be able to participate in until you reach certain levels. Like, for instance, you're not really going to be able to fight like an adult dragon in your first 5 levels of D&D. And I'm sure someone can think of some option of incorporating that. And certainly, they can feature as a scene element in that. They can make an appearance so that if you want to have that play up as a significant part of your campaign at a later point, you absolutely can do that. But I don't think they can meaningfully, they can't fight them the way they could if they were the appropriate levels, so that they're not going to get killed by or killed outright, at least by the dragon. So I think that my answer is I don't have an answer for a specific game. The games that I have had a lot of fun with ongoing campaigns or open-ended campaigns, the ones that have worked out the best, I feel, have been the ones that do not have a level-based system. Now, I know those examples would be like the Iron Kingdoms role-playing game and the Fantasy Flight Star Wars role-playing game. Characters get XP each round, they spend them on different things, and then they see their characters go up. And I don't mean to pick on just D&D here. I think that I ran Legend of the Five Rings, the first edition of that role-playing game, quite a bit back in the day. And I think they were called Circles then, is this sort of their equivalent of tiered play. And that also felt like characters really, really, really wanted to get to tier 2. Past that, it was fine, but tier 2 is sort of where a lot of characters got, at least they felt like complete, capable characters by that point. Not just like, the McHale's Navy equivalent of their characters. I read a review one time of one of the old Star Trek role-playing games that referred to starting characters in that game as the McHale's Navy equivalent of Starfleet. If you're not familiar with what McHale's Navy is, I would just do a Google search. It's an old sitcom that was made into a movie in the I think the either late 90s or early 2000s. In any event, it's just an incompetent crew. It's a comedically incompetent crew of characters. Now I say that so that the level-based game isn't going to support. I would have a hard time supporting online play or ongoing play. But maybe a way to get around that is just to say, like, we're going to go up when we go up. Start at a certain level. So you, like say in 5th edition D&D, third level is usually a good starting point. Because you at least got a recognizable specific character, and they're not going to die, if I throw 2 goblins at them. But with that, I mean, maybe either structuring as like an open world kind of ongoing campaign where you're just gaining XP as you go, and it's very sandboxy, or like hex crawl style play, that might work because it's not the DM who's arbitrarily setting the story points for levels. And I'm not saying that you couldn't do the story points for levels, it's just a side play for a certain length of time in your open-ended campaign, and then say, you know what, now we're level 4. But I just don't think that the structure works as well for level-based play. The exception to that may be 4th edition, and I know this series of videos has me singing the praises of 4th edition D&D much more and more. But that edition of the game, you're largely getting the full experience of that game in terms of the tactical depth of the combat right from the gate. Like you can have relatively the same level of complexity of encounters at first level as you can at 40th or 30th level. So maybe that you're not really waiting. Like I'm waiting to get my fireball spell, or I'm waiting to get my whatever else spell. Sorry, it's thundering here, and my dog is very upset right now. Maybe that game might suit ongoing play because it's so easy to reskin or like dial up, dial down the difficulty on things in it that really, yeah, I know, sweetie. That might still work because you're not really, I don't know, you're getting a more fully completed character at that point. But in any event, so that's my answer. So I think that the games that are best suited for open-ended play are likely going to be the campaign or the games that do not hew closely to a level-based system. Hello, yes, hello. They're ones that will allow, that don't have an end point for your characters. For a structured campaign, I think level-based games could be great. I enjoyed playing a level-based game for Shadow of the Demon Lord, and I'm enjoying running one for Shadow of the Demon Lord too. But for an open-ended game, that's probably yeah, I think I would err towards an XP based system. But in any event, that's a somewhat rambling answer to that question. Let's take a gander and see what tomorrow's question. Tomorrow's question: which RPG do you enjoy adapting the most? Oh, that'll be interesting because I love Cluesian games. So so we'll have to see what that answer will be for tomorrow. But anyway, for those listening at home, thanks so much for listening to this video or watching the video. If you have, as always, any questions or comments or concerns regarding my answer, please don't hesitate to put a comment in the section below. And if you have any thoughts of your own on my whole analysis of level-based advancement versus XP, I'd love to hear that as well too. It's something I'm going back and forth on, as you can probably tell in my answer to the question. So I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has some of their own experience of open-ended play with level-based mechanics. I'd love to hear that too. So anyway, thanks again for listening, and I will see you folks again tomorrow.